What is a species? It's an interesting question from an academic point of view, but it's also very important from a conservationist point of view. When I was taught about species and subspecies in high school, I was told a species is when two animals can reproduce and produce fertile young, but we don't use that definition anymore, especially in conservation, and I'll explain why. Now, the modern definition of a species is you can identify unique characteristics in one population compared to another 100% of the time. So there's complete differentiation between the two populations in their characteristics. In other words, they have gone on an evolutionary route separate to the other population, and they have characteristics which are simply never found in the other population, which means they can no longer easily adapt and survive if transferred into the other population's habitat, because they've gone down a new evolutionary path and they no longer contain the genetic viability which makes them adapted to the other population's habitat. Subspecies, on the other hand, in general, you can look at the two populations and see distinct variations, but there's overlap in characteristics and genetic variation. So they're not completely separated, not completely remove themselves to go down two different evolutionary paths. And so technically it may be possible for the animals from one population to have enough genetic variability in order to adapt and survive in the other population's habitat. So from a conservationist point of view, this is extremely important, because you don't want to introduce species into a habitat which they no longer have the genetic variability or the adaptations to survive. And therefore, this is why it's always very important to understand what species and subspecies we're managing in order when we're conserving, reintroducing, or even adding to a population which is no longer viable.